I first moved to London as a young one way back in 2010, and oh my dear, I utterly loved it. I actually still today think that's when my life truly started. That first night when David and I arrived to our tiny Soho flat and went out to get an air mattress to sleep on in our, grand 14 square meter room above all of the strip clubs and the sex shops. Can you imagine the romance? Anyway, fast forward 4 years and we're now in a slightly less tiny Shoreditch flat, and I have completely gone off living in London. So David and I up and leave and go back to Sweden for a couple of years to figure out what's next. So what happened between that beautiful March evening in 2010 when the glittering lights of Piccadilly Circus made it feel like all the possibilities are possible, and that bleak March day in 2014 when we got on the airport shuttle with all of our possessions and left London jaded and exhausted and dirt poor? There was not one reason for us leaving London. There were many. First up, I think everyone knows that London is an incredibly expensive city, but maybe not everyone knows exactly just how stupidly expensive it is. I'm not talking about food or cafes or buying a t-shirt. For sure, Sweden is much more expensive than the UK when it comes to that, but I'm talking about finding a home that you can afford. I mean, most people here live with flatmates well into their 30s because most people can't afford to rent their own place, let alone somehow find the money to buy a flat. It is ridiculous how so many Londoners actually have to leave their city and move someplace else if they ever want to be able to get a decent home. So being two fresh, inexperienced ones, David studying film and TV production by day and working at a West End theatre bar at night, and me trying to start a business, which was back then me selling vintage clothes online. Obviously, it wasn't financially the most stable situation. By the end of it, we were so tired of worrying about money and counting every pound in the food shop that we just took the fun out of living in one of the most exciting and vibrant and luxurious cities, because we made very little money and we had very high expenses and just couldn't see how that would change as long as we stayed put in the same situation. London is the best city in the world. It's fucking gorgeous, but only if you make enough money to feel safe and secure. And we sure didn't. Before we first moved back in 2010, we saved up a lot of money. That way we knew that we could afford the first 6 months in our dramatically tiny little Soho flat. And in fact, since we had no jobs and no UK bank accounts, the estate agent's demand was actually that we pay the first 6 months rent up front to give us the keys. It was like a hotel room. We bought a loft bed with 2 armchairs underneath and a little tiny kitchen nook and a bathroom with a shower, and that was it. But we loved it. We ended up staying there for a year and a half before David had enough and was beginning to get quite miserable in that tiny room and said okay, we need to get more space. So we found our Shoreditch flat from 15 square meter up to probably around 40. So obviously it felt like a palace to us. A bedroom no less, with a door, no more loft bed. We had a super happy time there to begin with. But unfortunately, it turned out that our landlord was one of those London landlords that you hear about, the horror stories. We don't even have enough time to go into all of the things that man did to us. Everything from stealing our mail to ignoring that our toilet leaked dirty water for a year and a half before he sent someone to fix it. And I think you can probably guess what fixing that leaking toilet meant. Yes, gaffer tape. Also, we had dangerous black mold in the ceiling in the bathroom. How he fixed that? Well, he painted the black mold with white paint and voila, that was it. One fine day when Dave and I was doing a shoot in our living room, all of a sudden the whole flat goes dark. It was really quite scary. So we look out the window and what do we see? Is this massive dark green billboard being put up in front of all of our windows, and it stays up for 2 weeks. We were living in complete darkness. Our landlord kindly pointed out to us that there is no clause in our contract to hinder him from cover the whole face of the building with a billboard. And then after a while, he takes it down, he waits a couple of weeks, and then he does it again and again. So sometimes we still walk past our old Shoreditch building and it is now always covered by a billboard. And we send like encouraging and sympathetic thoughts to whoever the poor soul is that has to live in that with Mr. S as their landlord. We had mice, we had cockroaches, first the small brown ones that move in packs, and then the massive black ones that look like something from the deep reaches of outer space. So one day I'm putting on a blouse, a sheer like see-through white blouse, and when I'm buttoning up the top button, I feel something move on my chest. I look down, and through the sheer white fabric, yes, I see that there is a big black cockroach crawling over my chest. And I have to find like the courage and wherewithal to like unbutton the blouse again to get the little creep out. So if that isn't a reason to leave London in and of itself, cockroaches actually running their little cold frenetic legs over your bare skin, I do not know what is. I want to give a big thank you to BetterHelp for being a paid partner in this video. 2024 has started, and I'm adamant, absolutely adamant, that I won't overwork or exhaust myself this year. But it sort of comes with the territory of running your own business, that constant feeling of like never-ending to-do lists and like juggling multiple tasks simultaneously. It can make it really challenging for my mind to sort of disconnect from work. I understand that many of you are dealing with demanding jobs or staying on track with your studies. It's so difficult not to become stressed and like lose sight of the essential aspects of life, isn't it? And balancing on that like thin line on the way to burnout. So regardless if you have like a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just like a human who lives in this world and is going through a hard time sometimes, therapy can help you, give you those tools to approach your life in a different way. And that's why I'm excited to today be teaming up with BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy accessible. And this is such an important job because finding a therapist can be hard. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you with a credentialed therapist in as little as a few days. If you're feeling like maybe it would be good for you to talk to someone and you want to give BetterHelp a try, it's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist through the link in my description or by visiting betterhelp.com/mustard. This link also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see whether it's something that's helpful to you and your situation. And because finding a therapist who fits you is a very personal thing, if you don't feel compatible with your first therapist, which is a really common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost. So if you're considering online therapy with BetterHelp, click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/mustard. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel, and now let's get back to the video. I think compared to most megacities, London is actually really polite and considerate and calm. In general, people here are kind and friendly, and it's not like a massively corrupted city, even though nepotism is of course alive and well, both in business and in politics. But the mood is really quite lovely, if you ask me. The thing is though, being from Sweden, a society which is incredibly mild and safe and with extremely little corruption, London by comparison could definitely feel quite cutthroat. When we first came here, it felt like every single company tried to scam us and that every poor young hopeful was fighting over every little scrap. And also, which was the most heart-wrenching to us, was the people who weren't big city hopefuls fighting for scraps, but the people who seemed to instead feel like really quite hopeless about their future. This isn't something you see a lot of in Sweden, people who have just sort of given up on ever bettering their situation. It was heartbreaking to us, and it made us wonder if we really wanted to stay in a city where there is such extreme goddamn wealth living side by side with people feeling this kind of hopelessness. So even talking about it now, I still feel like this is by far the worst aspect of London, the horrible wealth gap. By the end of our first 4 years in London, just before we moved back to Sweden, we felt like so many of the people we gotten to know and love in our early days had already moved on to someplace else. The transience of its citizens is one of the best and the saddest things about London. It's wonderful. People come here to like experience the city and study or work. The city is so vibrant and fresh this way. Immigrants coming with all that like enthusiasm and love for the city. But then after the experience, a lot of people move away again. Often not because they want to, but because of stupid goddamn visas. I lost so many friends to stupid visas. This transient aspect of London, especially of its younger population, can make it sometimes feel like London isn't a place that's sustainable to live in for the long run, as if it's more like an experience to have, not a home to build. A less emotional point, and instead a very practical reason to leave London, was for business. Starting and growing a creative business, first with the vintage clothing website and then as YouTubers, like, we knew this is what we wanted to do, but we also knew that it would probably take a couple of years before we could earn any type of real salary from it. It just became like unfeasible to pay that much in rent when we weren't expecting to make more or less any money for a while and just scraping by month. Luckily, quite a lot of Swedes have summer houses or like small wooden old-timey cottages that they aren't using much off season. So when David and I left London, we cottage jumped for almost like 2 years, living rent-free in different relatives' summer houses. Swedish summer houses in ice cold winter is not fun. And we lived for about 3 months without running water. That was an experience. But it doesn't get cheaper than rent-free, so that's where we grew our business instead, in the dark, cold Swedish forest. Those were like the poorest years of our lives and really like rustic and very uncomfortable in many ways, but also we were really quite happy those years. At least like now when I look back at that time, I feel nothing but like warmth and like a touch of sentimental nostalgia. And a big reason for that is also my next reason for leaving London: nature. Coming from the tree-deficient concrete of East London to nothing but trees as far as the eye can see, we felt like clean and like we were breathing real live oxygen for the first time in years. That particular area of East London, where we lived in that second flat, was so free of trees that there was no other way of telling which season it was than to look at like the amount of layers that tourists were wearing. And I realized like just how detrimental to your, brain health it is to not see trees every day. It felt like instead of trees and birds and the silence of like the natural world, we lived a life where we were like breathing pollution and listening to non-stop traffic in a way that almost felt like a tinnitus. The first few days when we were back to Sweden, the air was so clean that we actually felt completely sleepy all the time, so shocked were our bodies, but we couldn't sleep because the abrupt silence at night made our heads feel like dense and like our ears muffled. Isn't that almost scary, like how adjustable to our environments we humans are? It felt like we needed to sort of decompress and readjust our bodies to the Swedish forest after 4 years in the London concrete. So I know what you're thinking. After hearing all of this, why in the Lord's names did we decide to 5 years later move back to London again? Are we actually mad? Didn't we like get enough the first time around? But still here I am, sitting in a flat that I actually own in London, completely content. Yes, even I would have to say happy. And we might actually this time stick around for good. Who knows? Like, I'm not promising, but you never know. We definitely don't have any plans on like going anywhere else anytime soon. So what happened? How did we re-fall in love with London, the city that was our first love? Can you fall back in love with a place after, cockroaches on your actual chest? Turns out that indeed you can. But my friends, this is another story. I think we are done for today. I have reminisced a lot, which was so lovely for me. I feel all nostalgic and romantic and like utterly in love with this place, cockroaches or no cockroaches. What I'm hoping is that you are all feeling the same way about the city or town or hamlet or whatever it is that you're living in. Do tell, where are you living right now? And do you actually love it or hate it? Or are you like completely fed up like David and Jenny anno 2014? Basically, are you staying put, or maybe is it about time that you up and left? Talk to you in the comments. And of course, do give me a little like if you enjoyed this video and want me to make more of these sorts of story time videos. And don't forget to click the cute little subscribe button if you're new to my channel. And remember, if you are considering online therapy with BetterHelp, click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/mustard. Thank you again to BetterHelp for supporting this channel. And guys, thank you so much for watching today. See you very, very soon. Puss, puss.